Last Night in Soho is a film that explores the dark side of nostalgia. The story follows 18-year-old 1960s obsessed Eloise, played by Thomasin McKenzie, who travels from her home in Cornwall to attend fashion college in London. When she struggles to fit in, she moves out of her schoolrooms and into a bedsit in Soho. Also, it's important to note that Eloise can see dead people. Once she moves into her own place, her abilities get amped up, and every night as she falls asleep, she finds herself transported back to 1966 London and into the body of an inspiring singer named Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Eloise follows Sandy as she attempts to make her way in the swingin' 60s nightclub scene. And Eloise starts living a double life. By day, she's an ambitious fashion student using her time travel visions to inspire her work. And by night, she gets to experience what on the surface appears to be an enviable existence through the eyes of the glorious Sandy as she begins a relationship with the charismatic and cocky Jack, played by Matt Smith, who promises to make all her dreams come true.
What's going on?
An audition.
Ellie is seduced by these visions. She dyes and cuts her hair to match Sandy's and spends a small fortune on a vintage wardrobe. But then this illusion is shattered, and the past literally comes back to haunt Ellie, turning her nostalgic dreams of the 1960s into a waking nightmare. Director Edgar Wright called the film his dark Valentine to Soho, and it's an Italian giallo-inspired time travel horror trip, where the intermingling of yesterday and today has dangerous real-world consequences. And in the beginning, Last Night in Soho seems to be a love letter to the 1960s. This is Ellie's dream come true. She actually gets to experience 1960s London. But the reality is Ellie longs for a time and a place she really only has a surface-level understanding of. She's even warned that her nostalgia may blind her to real danger. But she can only contextualize the 1960s through its fashion and music and popular culture. She has no idea of how real life was actually lived by real people. Ellie is a character that so many people can see themselves in.
There's just something about the 60s that speaks to me.
We all know, or we might be, someone who latches on to an element of a time and place removed from our own, be it through fashion, music, literature, or anything else, and then we idealize that time as a better place. And on the surface, Ellie's love of 1960s London is understandable. During the 1960s, London went from the gloomy austerity of the post-war years to a vibrant and thriving capital, an epicenter of style, music, and fashion. Young people, finally free of conscription, developed their own subculture, and this was reflected in the clothes they wore and the music they listened to, which eventually infiltrated the mainstream. The Beatles, the Stones, Mary Quant in the miniskirt, mod style, Twiggy, everything that happened in London rippled out across the entire world. In Ellie's case, this love of that decade becomes a way to express herself aesthetically, but it's also an escape from her grief and loneliness. And in her first forays into the past, all of her ideas of the era are reinforced. There's the beautiful and elegant clothing, the handsome, sophisticated men, the music, the nightclubs, the adventure. It's all the fun of the past, like a visit to an amusement park. And it's the image that lines up with Ellie's fantasies. But the amusements suddenly and darkly transform into a macabre funhouse. Ellie's dream of the 1960s gets a dramatic reality check, and the seedy underbelly of the time and place is revealed to her through Sandy's eyes. Once Ellie's eyes are open, she sees disappointment and degradation. How excitement, optimism, and the lure of freedom can lead to exploitation and abuse. When Ellie asks her landlady if anyone has ever died in her room, she responds by saying,
"This is London. Someone's died in every room, in every building in this whole city. Every street corner, too."
A reminder that our collective and individual past inform our daily lives, and across time and space, violence, tragedy, and trauma are human constants. When we mythologize the past and serve that to generations with no first-hand experience of an era's violence, injustices, or troubles, this sanitized, unrealistic ideal becomes a better time, a better place with better people. When all along, they were never better. They were always just like us. There are 8 million stories in the Cinema Cities. This has been one.